children in a monastery who were making a flower bloom and materialized all kinds of things out of nothing.
You materialize your physical reality immediately all the time. It's just that those children have been taught that they're already doing that. So it's nothing that they deem or label as unusual. So the idea is to recognize you wouldn't have a physical reality experience if you weren't constantly materializing. And it's not just about your thoughts. It's about what you believe to be true. It's based on your theme of exploration and what's relevant for that. So you can expand the relevance, just as those children have, by retraining yourself and redefining the idea and understand that you're already materializing instantaneously. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a physical reality experience at all.
Is it also possible that when we're in a momentum and there's a certain manifestation that it's about to occur, that we can actually then create the thought that, oh, I want this, and then boom, it appears as if it's suddenly appearing. But
it can happen that way in the sense of the thought being an echo of something you already know is about to happen. It's not that the thought creates it, but the thought may be representative of the fact that you are aware that you're about to manifest it in linear time.
Very interesting. I want to ask you about relationships after this life.
Yes.
Will I know my wife and children when I transcend? Will my love for them still be as strong as it is now?
Yes. And in fact, it will actually be more all-encompassing. Because again, you are immersed in unconditional love in spirit. So it's not in a sense that it's stronger, but it's broader. It encompasses more. You see more deeply into that particular being. And yes, of course, you will experience them and many others in the afterlife, so to speak.
What advice do you have for people who are grieving the loss of a pet and who can't seem to get any signs or communicate with them after their passing? Is it likely that pets will reincarnate to be close to their humans again? And why do some animals choose the experience of being abused?
So that perhaps they will evoke the compassion in humanity to make sure that animals are never abused again, by example. So it requires action on your parts when you perceive the abuse of anything, be it animal or human or any other being, to take the action necessary to make sure that these kinds of relationships don't continue in the future. Reincarnation, as we have said, in a sense, can be created as an experience, and many times it may seem as if an animal has reincarnated to rejoin the human. It is another animal, however, but they may take on the vibration by being in connection with the pet that has died and exhibiting the same frequency to the human, so the human will see the flow through, the connection of that particular frequency to remind them of the pet that is now in spirit. So the animal that is with you physically may be acting as a conduit of communication for those in spirit who have passed on, so that you know that the connection still exists. I would suggest that you drop any insistence or expectation for how the spirit animal should communicate with you, and just trust that when it is necessary, you will become aware of a synchronicity that reminds you of the animal, or any time during your daily experience you may suddenly think about the animal, then that may be indicative of communication. And as we have said with regard to human, in the idea of grieving for them, you may find that the grief is simply the way you interpret their communication, because you label it as a loss. So grief sometimes can actually be representative of the fact that the animal is attempting to communicate with you, but you're only experiencing it as grief because you keep labeling the idea as if the animal is missing, whereas if you understood that the animal is present with you, just in a different state, and the animal attempts to communicate with you, you wouldn't necessarily experience it as a loss and therefore would not feel it as grief.
This viewer has the question regarding communication with the cetacean nation. You had said to communicate telepathically. So I have been sending one what I call a bubble of communication every day. I include an image of nature that I've seen in my day, and I blow it towards the ocean in my imagination, where I think I get the bubbles back with images from the cetacean's day. Is this really working? And if so, who am I communicating with exactly?
Yes, it's working, and you may be communicating now and then with various random cetaceans, in the same way that you may communicate with various random humans in your course of daily events. It's not always necessarily the same cetacean. It will depend upon what cetacean needs to pick up on the vibration of the telepathic communication and imagery you have sent, and what is relevant for you to receive from a different cetacean based on your themes of exploration. So yes, it's working, but you have to be a little bit broader in your allowance of who it is that's sending to you and who it is that needs to receive whatever it is you have sent.
Thank you. What's the best way to get information from the Akashic records?
Well, again, don't think of the Akashic records as a particular place separate from any other place. Remember, everything is here and now, including information. So the idea is to simply recognize, as with anything, it's an issue of resonance. If you vibrate in harmony with a particular frequency that represents certain information, then that information will be accessible to you if it's relevant for you to receive it. Remember, anywhere you are is within the Akashic records because, again, all information exists here and now. Lose some of the idea of space and time. Start really understanding and feeling that you are in the now moment and that all information is here now with you. And again, if you have a particular passion or interest in certain information, then focus on that and vibrate according to that passion. Feel that excitement about that information. Remain quiet and calm, and just be open to receiving it either through synchronicity or in your mind or whatever way it needs to come to you along the path of least resistance. And the information that is relevant and necessary will appear.
And some say Akashic records can be rewritten to twist history. I believe Akashic records work to keep everything that has ever been acted upon, felt, or thought crystal clear, and that they cannot be messed with. Is that true?
Yes, they cannot be messed with. What someone is referring to is the understanding that there are many parallel histories. So depending upon a shift in your own vibration, relative to the idea of the Akashic records or information that is available to you here and now, you may shift into a parallel reality that has a different history. You're not twisting the history that was in the reality you were in. You're simply shifting to a different reality that has a different history. They all coexist simultaneously.
So when you have different factions with different opinions of what is history, how does that intersect with the idea of each timeline has its own history? Because it does seem that history can be rewritten, or it is written by those that are in power, so to speak.
It depends on what you mean by in power, because everyone is in power. But the idea, again, is that you exist by agreement in a reality that contains the potential to shift to different histories. So you will seem to remain in one reality, but you will insist on a different memory of a different history, even while remaining in the same shared reality, so to speak. Because your definition of your reality at this time is that you can remember different histories, even while still interacting with those that are in different realities, seemingly as if they're in the same reality you are in, because that's the definition of your reality at this time. Now, of course, this does not mean that sometimes people aren't fooling themselves or lying about things to say, well, it's this way or that way. You have to be honest in terms of your integrity. But the idea is that, yes, it is possible for people in your reality to experience different reality histories at this time.
And is it also the idea that if you feel like you have to force your version of history on others, that's a different energy that then would, how does that energy affect the idea of understanding your own history or the history of others?
Well, again, this goes to what we said about the idea of lying to oneself, or again, not feeling empowered by the history that you actually insist upon. Because if that is a true history for you, then you will simply naturally align with it in a way that requires no forcing for anyone else to believe the same history that you do, because you are in a different reality.
And so, what is divine timing, and can we influence it with our will of mind and manifestation?
No. The idea of divine timing is simply the timing that is correct for you. So this is why we incorporate this idea in the formula of following your passion, because then everything simply happens in perfect timing. Divine timing and perfect timing are the same thing, relevant to the theme that you're exploring as the individual that you are. There's no difference, and it's not affected by will per se. It's affected by passion in terms of what you shift to experience the timing of different events that manifest according to your theme of exploration.
And what is the mechanism of remote viewing? This is fairly long, so is this a good way to have some physical experience of what it's like to be on other planets and moons without limitation of the terrestrial body? And this person is not interested in spirit or dream visit, but in an experience where to some degree you physically feel the sulfur lava flows and hear the sounds of volcanic explosions.
Yes, well, again, this goes to the idea, like the Akashic records, that everything is here and now, and it's not really remote viewing, although we understand what you mean by that linearly. The idea is to know that those other planets are here and now. And again, the more you can identify with them, the more you can resonate in harmony with those ideas, if that is representative of your passion, the stronger the effect can be of experiencing, at least to some degree, some of the physical phenomenology and manifestations that exist on those other planets. So again, losing the idea that it is actually remote and allowing it to be more here and now with you will allow you to experience some of those sensations that you're asking about.
Okay, thank you. And in regards to old understandings, how would you update our understanding regarding shape-shifting?
Again, there are many different versions of you, so to speak, you, in parallel realities. So it's the idea of resonating and identifying with those other versions, no matter how similar or dissimilar they may be, that are connected thematically to you in some way, shape, or form, and taking on those resonances, and even sometimes those appearances, to the degree that you can actually energetically convince others to see the differences in you as well, to share those parallel reality versions in what appears to be your reality. You're actually creating a kind of a bubble in which it's all right to shift to different versions, at least in appearance, of different versions of you in parallel realities to the degree that others can also perceive them.
In a sense, does that relate to the idea of Darryl before he was a channel and then after he was a channel, that in a sense he learned how to provide that representation of your consciousness?
To some degree, yes. Although, again, shapeshifting can take it much further. If he was inclined, if it was necessary and relevant for his particular journey, he could resonate to the idea of our reality to the degree where we would actually start physically looking more like us. But that's not really necessary at this time.
And I think some people have commented that at times he does look more like you.
Now and then,
Especially when he's channeling.
yes, now and then the resonance may shift or expand to the degree where he may take on some of those aspects. All we're simply saying is he doesn't really need to fully shapeshift into the direction or take on the aspect of us to the degree where we actually appear to you, at least not yet.
Okay. What happens to the ego, the physical mind, and the personality self when a lifetime is completed? What of us continues? Is anything lost? Or does it all get to move forward together somehow?
Nothing is lost. It all moves forward together in the same way, by analogy, that you are no longer a child, but you still retain all the experience and the memories of being a child to whatever degree is relevant for you, even though you are now adults. You can move forward as an adult, yet you can easily call upon any memory of childhood that serves you at any given moment. So it's similar in that sense. You don't lose it. The identity and the personality of the physical being remains with you. You can access it and call upon it for experiential purposes at any moment you wish, as you even move on as a spirit into different realms and realities. So use the analogy of a child still being within you as an experience to call upon, even though now you are beyond childhood.